All right. I hope you all enjoyed lunch. So it wasn't traditional sandwiches. COVID and supply chains have changed the situations in the food service industry right now. So we had to take a little bit different route this time. This afternoon, we have a gentleman you all know, Dave Cooper. He has been with us through the full spectrum of this symposium. Of course, you know, he's the one that kind of gave the inspiration to start this thing, to get folks together to record history. And he was the very first one, and has been to nearly all of them. I think maybe one or so we're able to get to one here. He's done several presentations, of course, over the years. Always has. He's constantly researching and finding a lot of information, and he has historical presentation that's relevant to the commerce and Northeast Texas area this afternoon. So if you would, let's welcome.
Hello. 50 years after. I was sitting at my computer earlier this year and thought, well, it's been 50 years since I came to Commerce for the first time. 50 years later, we're still talking about it, so something happened. When I got to Commerce, I didn't know I was, I knew that I liked trains and I was a rail fan and all that. And I met this man right here. Mr. Terry Kirkland was a cotton belt train order clerk when I met him. He's a very smart man. This is Terry back probably in the later 60s. He's explaining a chemistry problem. Terry had a degree in chemistry from Texas Wesleyan University in Fort Worth. And of course, when Terry graduated, he got a job working in his field of chemistry. No, Terry liked trains. Terry got a job working for the railroad. He had a drafty stint, but after he got done working for the Army as a signalman, he went to work for the railroad. Mr. Terry Kirkland. This is me 50 years ago. I'm a little younger, a little skinnier, and a lot more hair. A guy named Mark Staniford took this picture, which I wrote about Mark Staniford a little while ago. I was from New England. Talk funny if I want to, but I'm not going to today. Anyway, this is Eddie, as he might have been known back then. He's on a Cotton Belt Train 17. It's sitting there in Commerce Yard. Okay, when Terry got back from the Army, he started out working for the L&N Railroad on the Florida Panhandle. I don't know what L&N station there is out there, but there's an L&N line that came down into the Florida Panhandle. And Terry went to work for the L&N as a train order clerk. He did that for about half a year. Then he got a job working for the Cotton Belt. I don't know the exact history, but sometime it would have been late 1971 or early 1972, he started working for the Cotton Belt. This is a Cotton Belt train southbound up in Pine Bluff. It's rolling past where the dispatcher building was. Terry was probably up there at some sort of a training, learning how to do his railroad job. One of the first jobs he got, it may have been the first job, I don't know. But he started working in Commerce as a train order clerk. This is a Cotton Belt unit here, or actually an SP unit working. It's either working the Sulphur Spring Switcher or the Greenville Dodger. and this is the Pine Street crossing. Dennis, you had a photo earlier that showed the same general location. This is a tighter shot. This locomotive's on the old Sherman branch. It was being used as a switch lane. During the early part of 1972, the Southern Pacific and the Cotton Belt were short of power. So the Baltimore, Ohio, Chesapeake, and Ohio, basically what we call the Chessie system back then, had excess locomotives, so they leased out 25 of these GP9s to the SP Cotton Belt. They ran primarily on the Cotton Belt and in Texas on the SP. There's one of them here going past the Commerce Depot. And Terry Kirkland, rail fan in residence, working the second trick for the Cotton Belt there at the Commerce Depot, he was able to record this train. This may have been when he wasn't working, could have been one of his days off. I don't know. And I wish this would have done a little better. But this is an Alco RS-11. The whole time I was in Commerce, the 2 semesters I spent at East Texas State University, I saw one Alco. And I expect this is an Alco Terry saw that first winter in Commerce. You can see there's a cotton wagon in the back of the photo there on the left side, and the trees look like they're with that leaf. So this is probably first winter there, 71, 72, somewhere in that time frame. The trains, when they came into Commerce, the power would cut off and go to the engine service tracks. There's a couple of units that Terry went out and this is basically snapshot photography. This is the kind of thing that would be there in Commerce. I don't know if anybody remembers Jacob Blankenship. That's Jake right there walking out to his caboose there on a Greenville Dodger. Here it is coming past the depot. Terry had a lot of shots, a lot of photographs of the Greenville Dodger. So evidently that worked out in his work schedule. He would have been going to work at 4 o'clock, and this is definitely an afternoon shot. So maybe this is just before he went to work, something like that. It's another leased locomotive. On the left there, you can see the scale house. Let me try this pointer here if this make it work. There it is. I think that's a scale house right there, the scale track. Another shot of leased power. These locomotives from other railroads would end up in Commerce. Either they were leased, like the B&O and the C&O locomotives were leased locomotives. This is probably a pool power locomotive. Cotton Belt had a pool with the Penn Central Railroad that went through East St. Louis. It would have gone from East St. Louis to Pine Bluff on the railroad. And this unit has somehow escaped from that pool. It was probably doing what they call equalization of mileage. It could have been a Cotton Belt or SP locomotive along the Penn Central someplace, going here and there. This some photographs of Cotton Belt's only GP7. In fact, it was the only GP7 on the Southern Pacific system. According to Terry's, this is a Fox photo. I don't know if anybody's familiar with Fox photo, but try this again. Right there is the date. It's August of 72, if I read it right. Fox photo was part of Walmart. Walmart had Fox Photo do all the photos. So this was printed in August of 72. This particular unit was working, I think, on the Sulphur Spring switcher sometime during the summer of 1972. It was retired by the Cotton Belt, and actually I think it was sent to Houston and retired in Houston. And it ended up being bought by the Illinois Central Gulf. They rebuilt it, and it is now, last report, it was working for Procter & Gamble in the Cincinnati, Ohio area. It doesn't look like this anymore, but just an interesting piece of history. Another day on the Dodger, another Greenville Dodger. Terry had a lot of Dodger shots. This one has a B&O locomotive. 4 cars. It wasn't too much a train that was going over to Greenville those days. Another Dodger. The car here. This is Terry's Monte Carlo. I can't remember. It was a 1970. I think it was a 1970 Monte Carlo. It's an orange car. It was hard top. Could go very fast. We won't talk about that. Anyway, yeah, it's been over 100 miles an hour that I know of. Some of those trains you had to move a little bit to get in front of them. This is the Washington Street Commerce. The depot, we can see it, it's right about there. But it's just a little bit out of the depot, going to Greenville. This is a photograph of a Southern Pacific NW2 switcher when it's been rebuilt. It's over at Miller Yard in Dallas. Terry grew up, was born and raised in Coppell, and then his family moved to Grapevine, so he was right there on the cotton belt. He knew where all the trains were in the Metroplex area, and probably quite a lot of the area around Northeast Texas and various other states. There's a story I've been told that when the officials in Pine Bluff wanted to know a historical fact or wanted to know something about the area, they would call Terry. This is what I've been told. This is a photograph at Tower 55. Terry had access to a lot of railroad locations because he was a railroad employee. Another August 1972 shot. This is a southbound Katy train. I think this was shot from the steps at Tower 55. So, like I said, Terry had access. He probably just walked right in there and started talking to the tower man. Did that with him several times. And the Fort Worth Depot is behind that microwave set up there. This is Rock Island. I believe this is in Fort Worth. Rock Island was one of the railroads that came in there. Terry traveled many, many places to get train photographs. More August trip. This is a trip that Terry made into Arkansas. So Ashley Drew. I can't read that. What's that? Which is the Arkansas short line. It's owned by a wood products company. And then the other one is Dardanelle and Russellville, which I believe is up near Russellville, Arkansas. Northwest Arkansas, another Arkansas short line. Terry went to many, many short lines to record the activities or, what kind of power they were running or what was going on at that particular town. A lot of different photographs like this. There's another one. Louisiana and Gulf and Louisiana Northwest Railroad on this photograph. I don't know where those two railroads met. Southern Arkansas.
That shot's probably Gippsland, Louisiana.
So this is a Louisiana shot. Escaped Arkansas, we're in Louisiana. And there's the Monte Carlo right there. It got around. It's in a lot of these photographs. That building right there where Terry's car's parked. So Mr. Kirkland was not only a railroader, he was a rail fan who traveled with a camera. I was told, this is something you can do, you can learn on the internet. You put a photograph up and you say, I don't know where this is at. I know that when the photograph was taken, because this locomotive was shot, built out of Rayburn in August of '72. It looks almost brand new in this photograph. So it's August, September of 1972. So somebody wrote back, well, that's probably Alvarado, is that how you say that? Alvarado. Learned something today. And Santa Fe would often break in the newly rebuilt CF7s on the line between Rayburn and Dallas. Well, that's what that locomotive is doing there. It's got a yellow bonnet F7 behind it there. September '72, so this is fairly newly outshot locomotive. I got to Texas, I can't remember, was it 28th, probably the 20th, probably the day before. And the very next day, I'm at the depot, taking photographs of trains, and I didn't know how to deal with the Texas sun. You can see the photo on the left there is pretty washed out. Y'all have some high sun in this neck of the woods. So the locomotive here, the 9257, it's the same locomotive here. This train 343's power. And the power was sitting there at the engine service track, and it brought it out, hooked it onto the train, and it led 343 out of Commerce. Now this was the first tunnel motor I ever saw, which was this particular one right here. I just read Richard Steinheimer's article in Trains Magazine about tunnel motors, so this was neat stuff. Brand new locomotive, right here in Commerce, Texas. This is literally the second day I was there in town. Of course, I'm supposed to be getting ready to go to school. When you're a freshman in college, you still have a lot to learn. But I already knew how to take pictures of trains. I just had to learn about the sun. I met Terry Kirkland at the depot right around that time. He said, "Hi, y'all, come on in." And I started watching Terry do his job. Terry being a train order clerk, there was second trip train order clerk. He would work from 4 o'clock to midnight. Those were his hours. And there was a lady that worked there as the agent. Her name was Billy Warren. So I had to make sure I was not there when Billy was there, or there would have been trouble. But if I was there when Billy wasn't there, I could just, as long as you don't do anything stupid, you're fine. On the, let's see, the 16th of September, that's when these photographs were taken. Terry and I took a trip and we ended up in Fort Worth. Terry knew all the schedules, he knew where everything was. This is Fort Worth, Texas. This is the southbound Texas Chief. Here it is on the left, it's coming into town. Here it is, right there. Tighter shot of it coming by. The following weekend, we went to Dangerfield, Texas. Another famous Cooper shot of the high sun. Before we got to Dangerfield, we stopped off in Sulphur Springs for a minute. Terry got out of the car and went into a house. I don't know whose place it was. I suspect it was Roger Plummer's house. He said, "I gotta go ask this guy something." So he probably stopped to see Mr. Plummer and asked him. Maybe he was asking him about Dangerfield. I don't know. We got over to Dangerfield and we saw a couple of the Alpha switchers there working the Lone Star steel plant. On the way back from Dangerfield, we were driving down Interstate 30, and we spotted this industrial locomotive on they call it the Tutco, where the power plant. This was the connecting railroad they were working on. This is a Plymouth locomotive, an industrial type locomotive that was working on building that line. This was before it opened. It opened up the following year, 1973. So we got a picture of that. Deluge, September 27th. This day it was pouring rain. Railroaders know this, that railroad is a 24/7 operation. These poor fellers are putting their train away. They've just come in on the Sulphur Springs switcher. And I'm underneath the eave of the depot, so I'm high and dry. I'm watching these guys. They're going to back their train into a track there. And this particular caboose, Cotton Dump number 37, is owned by Gary Powell. You probably met Gary Powell at these symposiums a time or two. That's how I got to learn about Gary, and we started corresponding back and forth about 37. It still exists. It's down in Temple Rock now, parked on the side track. But here it is, back in September 72, in the rain, getting back. The next weekend, Sherman Tower. I believe Sherman Tower still exists, right? It's been preserved. Okay, Sherman Tower, which is in Grapevine, but it used to be in Sherman. This is Sherman Tower. I've walked up on the boards of that particular tower. It's a Frisco tower. He's a Frisco operator. up there when Terry and I stopped by. And you could, just look up and down the line. And of course, there's Orange Monte Carlo up there, snuck into the photograph. I don't know how that Monte Carlo got around. But the operator up there, he told us a story about how a motor car had gotten out in front of a train. And the train had snuck up on a kid. So obviously that's never supposed to happen. You're never supposed to have motor cars and trains in the same block. That's a problem. So that's a story associated with Sherman Tower, which is now in Grapevine. Grapevine Village, what do they call it? By the depot, but this tower still exists. It's just not Sherman anymore. The shotgun train. We got back from Sherman. There was a train in the yard. I guess it was number 17. I'm not really sure what train it was. I didn't get a unit or train identity. But what had happened, Pine Bluff Yard was too full of cars. So they just grabbed up everything that was going to Texas and put it on this train and shot it out of Pine Bluff, and it ended up in Commerce, Texas, and they flat switched this big long train with a 4-unit road set to put it in station order. It's not a common thing, but back in those days, I guess if Gravity Yard was full, you had to do something to open up a track. That's why this is called a shotgun train. The train crew they weren't happy. They weren't happy that they had to flat switch this train in Commerce Yard. And Commerce Yard had what, 6 tracks? They had to sort out this big long train, put it in station order before they could deliver it to the next station. About a week later, I'm sitting on a gondola car. When you're 18, you can get away with a lot of stuff. So I'm sitting on the corner of this gondola, and this is train 17 coming into Commerce. There's a local power there. I'm not sure if that was probably the Dodger getting ready to go. But anyway, this train comes into town, and he's going to bring this train in and yard it. There's Blizzard's store. I suspect Blizzard's store at one time was a Commerce hotel. The structure looks kind of like the same as what we saw in Dennison's photograph. It just doesn't have the same roof on it. And maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but the location is the same. The next day, I went to the train depot. Was gonna, spend some time there, watch Terry work, and Terry said, "You gotta get out of here." Huh? Railroad officials are coming in on 343, and Billy Warren's here. You can't be around here. Okay. So what I did was I made myself scarce. These are Terry's photographs of the train I didn't get to see. I think I went up Sycamore Street and looked back and saw it come in, but I didn't actually get to stay and watch. This is an SDP 45, which is very unusual for our line, the line that went through Commerce here. So it is associated somewhat with passenger railroad because it had a steam generator. 3205 showed up a couple times in the local area. This is the business car Fairlane. It was built for Henry Ford. It was a Pullman car built for Henry Ford back, I believe it was in the 20s. That sound about right? And then the Ford family sold his car to the Cotton Belt. Cotton Belt used it as a business car for a number of years, and then it was sold. It was sold several times. And then finally, the Ford Foundation bought this car, and Fairlane is now up at the Henry Ford Museum in Dearborn, Michigan. So it's a well-traveled car. But in October 1972, it was right here in Commerce, Texas, just passing through. I couldn't stay. I had to go back to the dorm, wherever. As I said, Terry got around. On his days off, or if he took a vacation, he would make these road trips to these short-line railroads. The unit on the left there is an Alco switcher. Graysonia, Nashville, and Ashdown, if I remember correctly. It's a short line in southwest Arkansas. And this unit here on the right is the EMD MW2 switcher on the East Camden and Highland, which was a switching railroad that switched what used to be called the U.S. Navy's Schumacher ordnance plant or depot, or whatever it was, but it became a short line railroad. They had various industries there, and they interchanged with the Cotton Belt out just north of Camden. Terry had a car. He had that Monte Carlo, and it traveled wherever there were trains to be seen. Another day, C&O lease units. What happened, the Cotton Belt NSP were still power short into the fall. They were taking delivery of brand new tunnel motors and GE U33Cs, but they just still didn't have enough power. So they leased some more of the C&O B&O units, and we saw quite a few of them right here in Commerce. They would come through on the trains. There's a pair of them at Commerce engine service tracks. 1972, yes. So they need is a big year for ton miles. And Chassis System had taken delivery of a number of brand new Jeeps from EMD, so they had excess power. Must not have been moving that grain on the chassis. There's another chassis Jeep, the 3044. This one, if you remember those apartment buildings that were across from the depot there in Commerce, I think I was up on the fence. I don't remember. It's a long time ago, but I got someplace where I could get a little bit of elevation. And what call this place? Blizzard Store, is that the name of it? That's right. I believe that's the old Commerce Hotel right there. You see it, this 1972 photo was Blizzard Store. With the Chesapeake and Ohio Jeep in front of it. That's just, what else could it happen? One night, I hopped a train out of Commerce. I'm not supposed to do that, but I've done it. And went to Dallas. And got out with my camera, and the Santa Fe yard was kind of over in the vicinity of the state fair. So not only did I see this Santa Fe facility, it's another one of those brand new or near new CF7. I think that was at $25.99. Something to do. Another visitor here at the Commerce Engine Service Track, Penn Central 3146. I believe the two power pools that Penn Central had with Cotton Belt, one was out of Collinwood, which would be in Cleveland, as the old New York Central line, and then the other one was out of Enola Yard on the old Pennsylvania line, which was near Harrisburg. And they went through Pine Bluff. I went through St. Louis and down to Pine Bluff. That was the parameters of the pool. And a locomotive, they did what you call either horsepower hours or mileage. And they tried to keep the pools fairly balanced, but sometimes to do what they call equalization, some of these foreign visitors from a Yankee railroad in this case ended up in Commerce, Texas. Several days later, I got up in the cab with Mr. Robert McFetridge, who was a Cotton Belt engineer. I believe Jason, you rode with him once or twice, right? Yeah, I think a lot of people rode with Robert. Anyway, I got on a train. He had a C&O Jeep, and I rode that train over to Greenville. I think it was like 15 miles over to Greenville. And they switched around over in Greenville. And the Jeep was slippery, the slip light kept coming on, it was an orange light, flashing in the cabin. Robert was as cool as a cucumber. He'd throttle it down and then throttle it back up and just keep pushing. They completed their switching over there. We left in daylight and we got back to Commerce. It was probably right around sundown. And Robert took the roll up. You can still see the folds here. He had this thing rolled up in his pocket, a big old jacket. Took it out of his pocket, handed it to me because obviously the trip was over. He was done with that train order. And you notice down here at the bottom of the order is a copy by Operator Kirkland. So it's just kind of I always liked this train order. It meant something to me. I wish I had gotten a picture of the train. SP 3632 and the cotton wagons. I don't know exactly what day this picture was taken. I know I'm fairly certain it was taken in November. I took copious notes back in the day. You can see the Jeeps there on the service track. Oops, back up here, ready. Not too far. Push the wrong button. Here we go. You can see the cotton wagons. They look like they're empty. They're just sitting there. And this is a motor car storage building. It looks like it's empty as well. This would have been in November sometime. This particular Jeep stayed around for about 10 days, which is unusual. Usually they changed them out after about a week. They must have liked this one. I don't know why it stayed, but it did. Veterans Day, Jerry and I took off, I think it was a Monday that year. We went to, I think it was Fort Worth, but we found this train coming through Greenville. It's a Katy train, so I got a picture of the front and the back of the train. Commerce again, I've looked at this, I've studied this a little bit, and I didn't know that Jason used this photo here on the right on the website. I'm fairly certain now it was taken on or about the 20th of November, and the locomotive was the 3647. Both the 3641 and the 3647 were in Commerce that particular month, but everything kind of aligns up with the 20th because of all of that right there, all that power on the side. This particular photo here, that's the remnant of the old Sherman branch. It's about half a mile, and that branch was left and it was used as a switch lead by the Cotton Belt to switch Commerce Yard. Towards, let's see, early December, another Saturday, December the 2nd. This was the second trip that Terry and I made over to Rayburn. Terry was familiar with Rayburn. We were there, we had been there in September. Went back in December, and I think he said it might have been the last run of that particular year, I'm not really sure, but they had 1702, which is a consolidation type, built for the U.S. Army Transportation Corps. They had that in service with this passenger train that they would run down their line. We got to see that. I have a photograph of this too, but I didn't have it scanned. So we went with Terry's photograph. We were standing side by side and took these pictures. On our way back from Rayburn, we stopped off in Maud, Texas, which is out of Texarkana before you get to Mount Pleasant. You probably all know where it is. And this is the PSSE train, it's the Pacific Sunset East. It was parked in the siding with some of the big slabs of metal right there right behind the tower. And Terry got out and talked to the brakeman and said, we're stuck here for a couple sections of the blue. So a few minutes later, the first Blue Strip merchandise came by, and he was probably doing about 70 miles an hour, whatever the speed limit was. He was going just as fast as he could go. Here's the brakeman here, he's going to roll by. And somebody has told me that he should have been on over on the other side rolling by, but this is kind of narrow through here at Maud. And there's a ditch there, so he probably didn't want to get into all of that. There's Terry right there. Terry's at the next pole up, getting his photograph. So Two rail fans coming back from Rayburn, Arkansas, stopped off in Mott, Texas to see the Blues. The second Blue showed up 10 minutes after the first one. They were running right on each other's blocks. And this one was going just as fast as he could go. You can see the brakeman's got his arm out there. He's waving to us. And this was Mott, Texas. So I put it at track speed. Whatever speed they were allowed, they were doing every bit of it. You could feel the heat wave coming up the side of the cut there when they went through. So they were doing whatever kind of performance they could do. 2 weeks later, this is going to be our last photo, I think. This is Train 318. Train 318 was a Dallas to Pine Bluff train, if I remember correctly. And this was before the week of finals. These 4 units were going out of Commerce Yard. The yard was completely empty. This is 318's caboose right here. This is the piggyback lead. There used to be the roundhouse lead back in the day, but in 1972 they were using it as a piggyback loading ramp. And I walked down and shot the first two units of the train. Shortly thereafter, I left town, as did I about a week later. I left on the 21st, 22nd, somewhere in there, Christmas break. Now, if I had paid more attention in class, it wouldn't have taken me 9 years to get through college. But I did pay attention to trains. That's it. Questions? Comments? Otherwise? Commerce has changed, that's right. I do have some cotton belt news here, if anybody's interested. Indulge me for a few minutes. I stopped off in the Arkansas Railroad Museum on Thursday, as I often do. Let me start a week ago. Actually, I started a week ago. A week ago, I got to go to the Cotton Belt Reunion in Scott City, Missouri. And that is a gathering of all Cotton Belt rails in that local area. I got to sit at a table. We had a chicken dinner, but it was good. I got to sit with a couple of number ones. Number one engineer and a number one train order clerk. So that was kind of a rare event. Get to sit with some people that have that kind of seniority and share some information. This is the first time I've been able to go to this event, because usually the Cotton Belt Reunion and the Cotton Belt Symposium are on the same weekend. So this is the first time I've been on different weekends. I had shared some photos with the people there at the Scott City Museum of their CTC machine. I don't know if you know the story about that, but the CTC machine at what was called Ilmo was put in 1942-43, and then it was moved in 1954 to Pine Bluff. And then from Pine Bluff, from the dispatcher's building, it was moved to the museum. It was reunited with several other CTC machines. And then one day, earlier this year, it was decided this particular CTC machine needs to go back to Scott City, almost. So it was moved back to Scott City earlier this year, and it's set up now in the Scott City Museum. They're kind of proud of it. I got them some photos that are in the Cotton Belt Public Relations photos of the machine being removed from the Ilmo Depot in February 1954 and then unloaded again. It was removed from Ilmo Depot, put on a Cotton Belt baggage car, and taken to Pine Bluff. It was unloaded in Pine Bluff later on the same day and installed in Pine Bluff and put in operation within about 8 hours after it arrived in Pine Bluff. So that's my Ilmo story. At the Arkansas Railroad Museum, and several people, I don't know if anybody knows J.P. Dunger. J.P.'s there, been there for a number of years now. I met JP up at Illinois, I mean, it's Hot City because JP was from there, but JP lives in the Pine Bluff area now, so he was at both places. He was at the Arkansas Railroad Museum that Thursday morning when I stopped him. We chatted a bit, he told me some more of his stories. And then I was left there with Mr. John Wellenberger. I don't know if you know John, but he's been with the CBRHS for quite a while, probably since its founding. John has a financial background, he knows some numbers. Not really a real fan, but he's a good guy to know. And we talked about the Cotton Belt Star, which is a publication of the Cotton Belt Rail Historical Society, and I said, well, what's going to become of this? He said, well, we'd kind of like to get it going again, but we don't really know how, who's going to do it. John said, well, he had done a number of them back in the 80s and early 90s, so I'm a crazy person, I volunteered, I'll do it, okay? So he gave me a disc with all the Cotton Belt stars from 1984 to 2013, just so, I already had a number of these, but just so I have an idea of what was what. So if you're a member of CBRHS, or if I can encourage you to join, the Cotton Belt Star will be published again. I'm not sure exactly when. The 819, which is a focal point of that museum, is now the state locomotive of Arkansas. A man named Craig Christensen, who is a legislator in Arkansas, made sure that that bill was passed. So now 819 is the state locomotive of Arkansas. That may possibly lead to some type of funding. That's not a for sure thing. It's just a hope for thing. Stay tuned is all I can tell you. Right now it's under cosmetic restoration. And Mr. Bill Bailey is involved with this restoration, so that's actually good news. Bill Bailey's involved. It means several things have happened. It means that the powers that be in Pine Bluff are changing. The museum is changing. Bill Bailey's getting involved in it, so I don't know what that means. Stay tuned. Some more news. The business car Traveler, the Cotton Belt business car, was built by Pullman in 1905. It worked for Cotton Belt officials through 1958. It was retired in 1958. It was not scrapped. It was saved by a person in Arkansas who saved it. It is, and then another man bought it from him. It is in a town location somewhere south of Pine Bluff. The museum has a $100,000 grant to move the Traveler from its current location to the Arkansas Railroad Museum. That's big news. If you know about Traveler, it's the business car from which Robert McClanahan was hired back in 1945. You know the story of Robert McClanahan, 17 years old, had just been fired from his movie projectionist job in Mount Pleasant, Texas. And the car Traveler was coming through town on some particular train. And somehow McClanahan met the train. Somehow the superintendent or the official that was on the train heard this story and hired McClanahan on the site to, he became a railroad telegrapher. The rest is history. Robert McClanahan went on to work for the Cotton Belt and SB for 43 years. When he retired in 1988, he was the superintendent of the Cotton Belt. He had 5,000 people working for him. So that's quite a change from fired movie projectionist to superintendent of a railroad. That's a life story. And there's something big that's still brewing, and I can't tell you about it. I'll just tell you that there's something big. It involves history. The Cotton Belt Rail Historical Society is kind of on its butt right now. It needs some help. There's 4 volunteers still working in that museum up there. It's to the point where the only way it can go is up. So that may be news in the next little while. Anybody got any questions? other than what I can't tell you about. Nothing. And bored you to tears. Jason, microphone's yours.
Thank you. Always great information. I can't wait to hear what we can't know yet. There's one other set of folks I need to thank who are here. That's the facilities folks and Sodexo for the setup and food and everything that you see. When I was kind of going over the setup yesterday with the folks, Elvis Stang is the one who oversees that, and I extending thanks to him. So he takes care of us. He couldn't be here today, but he gave me his cell number. He said, if you need anything, very little, whatever you call. And they really take care of business and do an excellent job for us year after year. He said he likes working with me because he knows exactly what we want. This is the plan that I give them. And we update it a little bit every year, and kind of adjust it for numbers expected and so forth. But he has some student workers working for him this semester that are all about attention to detail. If you look at the arrangement of the chairs, when I walked in yesterday, I nearly hit the floor. It is exact what I have on this drawing. This is just an illustration, maybe random. But he said, so one of the student workers spent over an hour getting those chairs exactly like I had it on this piece of paper. Bless their heart. I guess I'm in the drain for something. But we really have great folks on campus that take care of us and make this a lot nicer and easier and make everything run smooth for us. He's not here, but Elvis, and the guy next to him, so really help like that. They do a great job. And I believe we are into the drawing. We want to handle. If a lot of you have shared some great ideas with me today about direction and future ideas for the symposium, and we'll probably need to look at another day. So if you have some thoughts on that, please share with me. I'll have email me. We've got the group, Facebook group, before, so we can have some dialogue there. If you find information that's of interest to folks, feel free to share that on our Facebook group. Symposium. It's all about preserving the history, sharing information, so that stuff's not just lost forever. Does anybody have any general questions or any comments that you'd like to make before we close it out?
Just one question.
I was at Lulu's last night with Jason and Myra, and we broke bread and talked about things. And I volunteered again. Never volunteered, I'm not supposed to volunteer, but I volunteered again next year to present the historiography of the Cotton Belt. Basically, I want to get to where to find Cotton Belt history. And it relates to what I can't tell you about, but I do want to be able to do historiography. That sounds like an exciting topic, historiography. It's just a big word that means people know absolutely nothing about anything. I spent at least half an hour last night how to say this historiography. It's a big word. I tripped over it a couple times. But I have been searching for Cotton Belt history, finding it. Dennis, you're a great finder. Remember I did a program once about being a finder, not a keeper. You fit that bill. You find things that nobody else can find, but If you're not looking for it, you'll never find it. You have to look. You have to actively search to find things. And you may not find it on the internet because nobody's put it there. There's a lot of things in the world that aren't on the internet. You have to actually go out and find them. You have to keep finding Commerce, Texas. 50 years ago I found this place, and I'm still coming back here for some reason. Anyway, next year, whatever date we decide on, his story I was thinking about. It's an exciting topic to a few of us maybe. Jason?
That's it. And again, I want to thank Sergeant for his work today in doing this and the work of the archives. Like I said, there's more information as it's found, it just keeps showing up online. So you search for something today, you don't find it tomorrow, it might be there. Maybe not. And these folks in our special collections and archives, they have done a tremendous job of getting a lot of that, a lot of material and items that they have scanned online in the digital format, so it can be shared with the world, so it can be on their records. All right. I don't need to. I would. Well, let's see. Stranger Dennis, huh? Woo! Thompson. It's not. All right. See how to pronounce this. Tom, then? And while Tom's coming up here, I'm going to mention that some other supports that we've had throughout the years, it takes them all over the place. Tom is a member of the organization. We've had open houses before with the train show, they all the members are over there. But if you have a burning desire to see the land, you give this gentleman right here, and I think you know somebody will keep. So, like, show you that. Ella. Really nice. Yes, please do. We'll try to pull it out when we get a date settled on. And if you're in Earth next time, usually on the Friday before, some people like to come and visit. We've been, the last few years, been getting together at Lily's Burgers out here on Culver, just visiting people who wants to show up. Come on and sit there and eat burgers or catfish or whatever you like. They have good food all around. So, all right. I don't know anything else you may know. But anything you need to say? Thank you all for coming. Appreciate your support. Please be safe in your travels and